The world called him the sexiest man of the century. The Queen of England knighted him, and millions of men aspired to possess his demeanor. But do you know what lies hidden behind the dapper tuxedo, the shaken martini, and Sean Connery's deadly half-smile? It isn't the chivalry of a gentleman. It is an iron fist, quite literally. I don't think there is anything particularly wrong about hitting a woman if she doesn't shut up. That quote isn't from a 007 script. It was a cold declaration made by Sean Connery himself on national television. Behind the cinematic legend lay a toxic patriarchal ideology, a man who believed violence was a legitimate teaching tool. From a locked hotel room in Spain echoing with the choked sobs of an ex-wife, to the fearful silence of female co-stars. Today, we reopen the dark dossier on the 6 women who passed through Sean Connery's life, women who were abused by him, both physically and mentally. Sit tight, because the monument in your heart is about to crumble. Welcome to the naked, violent truth behind the mask of the legendary James Bond. Diane Cilento, the Night of Terror in the bathroom. In the 1960s, if there was one man the entire world desired, it was Sean Connery. He wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural phenomenon, with a perfectly tailored Savile Row suit, a cigarette dangling from his lips, and a cold Walther PPK at his hip. Sean Connery as James Bond defined the standard of masculinity. Men wanted to be him, and women wanted to be with him. In the public eye, the luckiest woman in the world at that time was Diane Cilento. She was beautiful, talented, an Oscar-nominated actress, and most importantly, she was Mrs. James Bond. Photos of the couple on the red carpet always exuded marital bliss. Sean holding Diane's hand, his eyes full of protection. But no one knew that the possessive grip of that hand, once the bedroom door closed, could turn into a vice tight enough to suffocate. The story we are about to enter didn't happen under the flashing lights of London or Hollywood. It took place in a stifling hotel room in Almeria, Spain, in 1965. This was when Sean was filming The Hill, and when the aura of Agent 007 was at its blinding peak. According to the tear-soaked recollections in the autobiography My 9 Lives, which Diane Cilento wrote many years later, the air in Spain that night was sweltering. But inside their room, the atmosphere was colder than an ice cellar. It started with silent cracks. Sean Connery, the man who grew up in the poverty-stricken slums of Edinburgh, carried a heavy, traditional, patriarchal mindset. To him, a wife was the keeper of the hearth, the one who stood behind, the one who must submit. But Diane was an artist with personality. She yearned to act, to live her own life. Ironically, that independence was the spark that ignited a fire of insane jealousy in the heart of the sexiest man alive. That night, after a party with plenty of alcohol, an argument broke out, not about major issues, but revolving around Diane wanting to take a new role. Sean's roar echoed within the 4 walls of the hotel. He could not accept his wife slipping out of his control. And then, the thin line between a gallant gentleman and a brute was erased. Diane recounted that before she could react. A blow as heavy as the sky crashed down on her. It wasn't a warning slap. It was a punch from the fist of a large man, a former coffin polisher and bodybuilder. The world spun before Diane's eyes. She collapsed onto the cold floor. Agonizing pain washed over her, and darkness enveloped her for a moment. When she came to, Diane's first feeling wasn't pain, but sheer bewilderment. Was the man who just struck her, the husband she once loved, was this the dashing spy millions of women dreamed of? Sean stood there, towering like a mountain, his face set in stone, without a shred of remorse or pity. The horror didn't stop there, according to Diane, after knocking her to the floor. Sean Connery did something perhaps only the worst dictators would conceive of. He locked her in the bathroom. Imagine that scene, a famous actress, wife of a global superstar, locked in a cramped, dark space with a bruised face and a shattered soul. She curled up on the freezing tiled floor, listening to her husband's footsteps outside. Perhaps he was pouring another drink, Or perhaps he was sleeping, leaving her with the fear gnawing at every cell of her body. In those hours of confinement, Diane Cilento realized a brutal truth. She was living with a man with two faces. One face was James Bond saving the world, the other was a jailer in his own home. The scariest part wasn't the fist, but the silence that followed. The next day, when the bathroom door opened, life had to go on as if nothing had happened. Diane had to apply heavy makeup to hide the bruises, wear oversized sunglasses, and continue playing the role of the happy wife. She couldn't call for help. Who would believe her? Who would believe that the polite gentleman, Sean Connery, was a wife-beater the whole world worshipped him? If she spoke up, people would only think she was a crazy, jealous, lying woman. That isolation was the most terrible psychological torture. Sean Connery seemed to know his power well. He knew the James Bond mask was too perfect to be peeled away by a woman's words, even in later years, in interviews. He calmly spoke about slapping women as a life philosophy, a way to assert, "I hit you because you deserved it." Decades later, when Diane Cilento bravely published this story in her memoir, she faced a wave of criticism from Sean Connery's rabid fans. They claimed she was lying, that she wanted to ride her ex-husband's coattails. But there are pains that no actor, no matter how talented, can fake. The details in her retelling the coldness of the floor, the click of the lock, the helplessness in the bathroom that night, all carry the weight of a truth buried for too long. The Night of Terror in Almeria wasn't just Diane Cilento's story. It was a wake-up call about the dark corners behind the closed doors of Hollywood's elite. A place where fame can become a shield for crime, and a gentleman's smile can hide the hand of an abuser. Diane Cilento survived that night, but a part of her soul was left forever in that cold bathroom in Spain, under the giant shadow of the husband bearing the title 007. Barbara Walters, the slap on national television. If the previous chapter made us shudder at the haunting recollections from a closed room, in this chapter, we step into the light. No more rumors, no more memories suspected of being embellished. This time, the truth was exposed right before the eyes of millions of TV viewers, under bright studio lights, and recorded forever on the magnetic tapes of American journalistic history. Let's rewind to 1987. This was a time when Sean Connery was at a new peak in his career. He had just shed the image of the dashing spy 007 to play a gritty aging cop in The Untouchables, a role that would later win him a prestigious Oscar. He was respected by the world as a titan, a model Scottish gentleman with a charismatic salt and pepper beard. Opposite him in the interview chair that night was Barbara Walters, the Queen of Television. A woman famous for making heads of state cry and Hollywood stars confess their deepest secrets. The conversation initially took place in a polite, cozy atmosphere. Barbara Walters, with her inherent sharpness, slowly led the story through Sean's illustrious career. But she didn't come just to praise him. In her hand was a file, and inside was a stain Sean Connery had left more than 20 years prior. It was that shocking interview in Playboy magazine in 1965 where he stated that hitting women was not wrong. Public opinion at the time believed it was just youthful ignorance. A 35-year-old arrogant Sean Connery might misspeak, but a 57-year-old Sean Connery, seasoned and experienced, would surely be regretful. Barbara Walters believed she was handing him a golden opportunity to whitewash his record. She expected an apology, a remorseful headshake like, "Oh, I was young and foolish back then. I was wrong." She looked straight into Sean's eyes, her voice calm but firm, recalling the old quote and asking the question America was waiting for. "Sean, you said that in an interview. Now, after all these years, do you still think that—" The whole studio held its breath. The director in the booth held his breath. This was the moment of truth. And Sean Connery, with a composure so calm it was terrifying, shattered every expectation of repentance. He didn't flinch, he didn't blush or avoid Barbara's gaze. He leaned slightly forward, looked straight at the most powerful woman in American television. and spoke words that chilled listeners with their cruelty wrapped in a veneer of rationality. "I haven't changed my opinion," Sean replied, his signature deep, warm voice without a stutter. "Not at all." Barbara Walters was stunned. She tried to salvage it, tried to offer arguments for him to realize the problem, but Sean Connery continued his lecture, like a professor explaining ethics, not a man justifying violence. He explained clearly, "I don't think it is bad, and I think it depends entirely on the circumstances and if it merits it. If you have tried everything else, and there are women who are pretty good at this, they can't leave it alone. They want to have the last word, and you give them the last word, but they're not happy with the last word. They want to say it again, and get into a really provocative situation, then I think it's absolutely right." Sean Connery wasn't speaking in anger. He didn't shout, didn't pound the table. He spoke with absolute calm. That was the scariest part. If he had lost his temper, one could argue he lost control. But no, he was using logic to legitimize violence. He was sitting on national television, teaching millions of other men that women are like unruly children, and men have the right to discipline them with force if words don't work. In Sean Connery's eyes at that moment, people didn't see an action hero. They saw a picture of an archaic patriarch, a man who believed men were the center of the universe and women were merely creatures to be controlled. The way he described women who can't leave it alone showed deep contempt for the female voice. Barbara Walters, no matter how seasoned, froze in her chair for a few seconds. She represented the voice of modern independent women, and she was being slapped in the face with words by a masculine icon on her own show. The silence that enveloped the studio after Sean Connery's answer was heavier than any booing. It was the collapse of an idol. That 1987 interview became indisputable, hard evidence. It confirmed that what Diane Cilento recounted in the previous chapter was not a fabrication. If Sean Connery could calmly admit to slapping women on TV before millions of viewers, imagine what he was capable of in the darkness of closed hotel rooms. Years later, people still tried to excuse him, saying it was the mindset of the old generation. But violence has never been a generational issue. It is a character issue. Sean Connery left the studio that night with the smile of a victor, believing he had just had a fair debate. But he didn't know that he had signed the verdict on his own conscience. The footage of that interview still exists today, floating on the internet as a grisly reminder. It shows us that, sometimes. The scariest monster isn't the one with fangs and claws, but the one who speaks in a seductive voice and believes he has the right to hurt others in the name of discipline. Tippi Hedren, The Predator's Instinct. We are about to enter a haunting gray zone where the line between acting and reality, between movie scripts and personal ideology, is blurred to a chilling degree. There are no fiery punches in hotel rooms here, nor shocking declarations on TV. But violence exists here in a more subtle form, psychological dominance. The setting is 1964, on the set of the movie Marnie. This was when Tippi Hedren, the beautiful blonde muse, was living a waking nightmare. She wasn't just the star of the film. She was prey obsessed over, harassed, and controlled by the legendary director Alfred Hitchcock. But today, we aren't talking about Hitchcock. We are talking about the man standing in front of the lens with her, the man playing her husband in the film Sean Connery. In Marnie, Sean Connery shed the dashing 007 image to play Mark Rutland, a wealthy, polished businessman who carried the instinct of a master hunter. Mark Rutland discovers that Marnie, played by Tippi, is a professional thief suffering from frigidity. Instead of turning her over to the police, what does he do? He blackmails her, forces her to marry him, and treats her like an interesting case study for him to cure personally. The scariest part of this role wasn't in the script, but in how Sean Connery portrayed it. There is a spine-tingling coincidence between the character Mark Rutland and the real Sean Connery we dissected in the previous 2 chapters. Mark Rutland believed women were wild creatures needing to be tamed, just like the horses on his farm. He believed firmness, the imposition of male power, was the medicine needed to bring a woman back to the right track. And Sean Connery? He didn't need to act much, because just 1 year later, he himself declared to the press, "A slap is necessary if a woman doesn't listen." On the set of Marnie, Tippi Hedren was caught between two vices. Behind the camera was Hitchcock with pathological possessiveness. In front of the camera was Sean Connery with the coldness of a superior. Let's fast forward to the most controversial scene, the one film critics call legalized rape. It is the character's honeymoon night. Marnie, cowering in fear, refuses her husband's intimacy. Mark Rutland, with a terrifyingly calm face, does not accept that refusal. He approaches her, not with the aggression of a criminal, but with the confidence of an owner. He rips her nightgown, looks straight into her eyes, and takes what he deems his husbandly right. In that scene, Tippi Hedren wasn't just acting Marnie's fear, she was channeling the real fear of a woman besieged by male power. Sean Connery's eyes in that shot didn't waver. They were sharp, cold, determined, and cruel. Those were the eyes of a man absolutely convinced that what he was doing was right. He didn't see it as violence, he saw it as teaching, as the process of breaking a spirited horse. Those present on set recounted that Sean Connery embodied the role so naturally it was disturbing. He wasn't flustered or awkward when performing acts of domination over his female co-star. To him, Mark Rutland was a hero, a man who knew how to handle problems, not a villain. It was Sean's normalization of violence that breathed a suffocating air into the film. Audiences shuddered not because of gore, but because of the absolute dominance of the male lead. Tippi Hedren later never accused Sean Connery of misconduct behind the scenes. She reserved that fury for Hitchcock. However, she admitted that facing Sean in those scenes was a heavy psychological experience. She felt an aura of patriarchal energy radiating from her co-star. Sean Connery, with his massive frame and imposing demeanor, was like an insurmountable wall. He represented a generation of men who viewed women as puzzles to be solved with force or control, not as human beings needing understanding. The horror of this chapter lies here. It shows that Sean Connery's violent ideology didn't just erupt in fits of anger, like with his ex-wife, but had seeped deep into his artistic mindset. He chose this role, he understood it, and he performed it excellently because he shared the same value system as the character. Mark Rutland on screen used money and coercion to fix his wife. Sean Connery in real life used slaps and the ideology of discipline to control women. Those two figures, the one on screen and the one in reality, seem to have merged into one. Lana Wood, The Cruelty of a Frozen Heart. We stop at 1971 amidst the burning Nevada desert and the gaudy neon lights of Las Vegas. This is the set of Diamonds Are Forever, the film marking Sean Connery's spectacular return as James Bond after a hiatus. The air on set was thick with the smell of money, champagne, and extreme excitement. Sean Connery was now 41 older, grittier, and paid a world record fee at the time to put the 007 tuxedo back on. In that glitzy, spinning world, there was a young girl named Lana Wood. Lana wasn't an unknown name, she was the sister of legend Natalie Wood, living her whole life under her sister's giant shadow and always yearning to find her own place in the sun. When cast as Plenty O'Toole, a Bond girl with a suggestive name and fiery curves, Lana believed this was the opportunity of a lifetime. But she didn't expect that the biggest lesson she would learn in Las Vegas wasn't about acting, but about the cruelty of a male heart turned to stone. If in previous chapters we saw a Sean Connery using fists or words to suppress women, in this chapter he uses a different weapon, softer but no less damaging absolute coldness. Lana Wood recalls the first time she met Sean Connery. It felt like being drawn into a powerful magnet. Sean didn't need elaborate seduction, he just needed to stand there with that arrogant smirk and eyes that seemed to pierce the soul. And that was enough to make any girl want to fall into his arms. Lana, young and hungry for love, quickly fell into the trap. Between breaks on set, between luxurious candlelight dinners, they had a whirlwind, passionate affair. For Lana Wood, the feelings were real. She saw in Sean a strong man, a solid rock. She thought that behind the cold exterior of Agent 007 was a warm heart capable of love. But she was wrong. Lana's biggest mistake was forgetting Sean Connery's unwritten rule and also that of the character James Bond he embodied. Women are for conquering, not for keeping. Lana Wood's tragedy was that she inadvertently became a living prop, not just in the movie, but in real life. In Diamonds Are Forever, her character, Plenty O'Toole, has a rather tragic fate. She appears gorgeous and sexy, entertains Bond for a moment, then is thrown into a pool and subsequently killed off quickly to make way for the main plot. Painfully. The real-life relationship between her and Sean followed the exact same script. When the cameras rolled, Sean Connery was the most passionate lover. He kissed her, held her, whispered sweet nothings. But the moment the director yelled, "Cut," or when the evening ended, an invisible wall was immediately erected. Lana recounted that there were times she tried to touch his real emotions, tried to talk about the future or deeper things, but the response was only polite indifference. Sean Connery wasn't rude. He didn't yell at her. He simply switched off his emotions, like one switches off a TV after watching an entertainment show. The abuse here didn't leave bruises on the skin, but it left deep cuts in her self-esteem. Sean Connery viewed this relationship as a perk accompanying the role. He was an A-list star. He had the right to enjoy the best of everything, the fanciest hotels, the finest wine, and the most beautiful girls. Lana Wood, in his eyes then, was perhaps just part of the premium service package in Las Vegas. He used her to fill voids, to relieve stress after tiring filming hours, and had absolutely no intention of letting her enter his real life. The most heartbreaking moment was when filming wrapped, the neon lights dimmed, the crew dispersed. Lana Wood stood there, waiting for a promise or at least a decent goodbye. But Sean Connery discarded that romance as quickly as he flicked away a cigarette butt. He turned his back and walked away, returning to his own world, leaving the young girl with a broken heart and utter bewilderment. No lingering, no guilt. For him, the contract had ended. Lana Wood's story is the clearest evidence of Sean Connery's ideology of objectifying women. He didn't need to beat Lana to show power. He showed power by making her see how small and meaningless she was in his life. He held the handle of the knife. He decided when it started and when it ended. She was just a disposable Bond girl, a beautiful toy displayed in the glass case of his fame for a few short weeks. Micheline Roquebrune, Complicity with the Devil. We have gone through 4 chapters with 4 different women, 4 different fates, but all shared a common ending when facing Sean Connery, either running away in fear or being left behind in pain. So the question arises, is there any woman strong enough to tame this wild beast? Could anyone survive beside a man who believed violence was power and patriarchy was truth? The answer is yes, and that person is Micheline Roquebrune. But to understand Micheline, we cannot use the lens of a victim. We must view her as the greatest accomplice. Their story began in 1970 under the blazing sun and dust of Morocco, at the Mohammedia golf tournament. Sean Connery, now separated from Diane Cilento and at the peak of his form, met Micheline, a petite French-Moroccan painter possessing fiery eyes. Unlike the fragile Hollywood starlets, Micheline carried the grit of North Africa. She didn't come to Sean for the 007 fame. She came to him because she saw in him a true alpha male. From the very first days, Micheline understood Sean Connery's rules of the game. She knew he was short-tempered. She knew he was selfish. And she knew he viewed women as subordinates, instead of trying to change him like Diane Cilento or waiting for romance like Lana Wood. Micheline chose a different path: accept and adapt. She became Sean's second wife in 1975 and stayed by his side until his very last breath in 2020. Over 45 years together, a record number in Hollywood. But the secret to that longevity contains a truth that makes outsiders shudder. In 2006, when Diane Cilento released her shocking memoir accusing Sean Connery of abuse, the whole world turned its eyes to Micheline. The public waited to see how the current wife would react. Would she be scared? Would she use this opportunity to expose her husband's true face? No, Micheline Roquebrune stepped out, standing in front of Sean like a steel shield. She not only denied all of Diane's allegations, but also counterattacked the ex-wife with the sharpest words. She called Diane crazy, a jealous woman who couldn't let go of the past. She defended Sean Connery with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her mate. But the scary part lies in Micheline's argument. She didn't say, Sean is a gentle man. She said, Sean is an old-school man. The phrase old-school man sounds nostalgic and romantic, but in this context, it is a velvet curtain covering cruelty. Micheline accepted and internalized Sean's ideology. To her, his temper, his shouting, or even Sean's idea that slapping a woman is okay, were not sins. They were expressions of masculinity. She considered it part of the combo package when marrying a superstar. She believed that to keep a man like Sean Connery, a woman must know how to endure at the right time, know how to step back when the storm hits, and most importantly, stand on his side against the whole world, even when he is dead wrong. Imagine life behind their closed doors at the mansion in the Bahamas. Micheline wasn't a wife suffering in tears. She was a shrewd manager, the keeper of the keys to Sean's life. She knew how to soothe the monster inside him. When Sean flew into a rage, she didn't argue back, she waited. When Sean was attacked by the press for his outrageous statements, she was the one speaking up to clarify, spinning those violent words into the frankness of a straightforward Scotsman. Micheline Roquebrune represents a group of women who exist in the shadow of powerful men through a mechanism of complicity. She wasn't a passive victim. She actively chose this life. She traded equality for the status of Mrs. Connery. She accepted living with a man who had beaten his ex-wife, who had belittled women on air, because in her eyes, the halo and protection Sean provided were greater than those spiritual scars. The abuse mot in this chapter doesn't come from Sean, but from Micheline's own compromise. She inadvertently aided and abetted Sean, making him believe he was always right. Because if the woman sleeping in the same bed with him every night for 45 years never complained, and even cheered him on, why should he change? Micheline was the one who confirmed to Sean Connery that women are indeed born to submit and understand men's rudeness. Kim Basinger, The Sting of Disdain. We stop at 1983, a turning point. By this time, Sean Connery had turned 53. His hair had thinned significantly. His beard was speckled with gray, and his face bore the crow's feet of time. But he returned. He returned to be James Bond one last time in the movie Never Say Never Again. But this wasn't a happy comeback. Sean Connery returned for a massive paycheck, $5 million at the time, plus a percentage of the gross, and more importantly, out of spite for the official Bond producers, he returned as an old lion, full of pride but also full of bitterness, ready to growl at anyone who dared stand in his way. And the unlucky person to step into the sights of that cranky lion was Kim Basinger. That year, Kim Basinger was just 30. She was radiantly beautiful, a modern, free-spirited beauty of the 80s, completely different from the classic dames Sean used to pair with. She played Domino Petacci, Bond's final lover. Kim walked onto the set in the Bahamas with a racing heart. She was about to work with a living legend. She imagined a polite Scottish gentleman who would guide her with experience and kindness. But Kim Basinger's fantasy shattered within the very first days of shooting. The atmosphere on the set of Never Say Never Again was as tense as a string about to snap. Sean Connery didn't just come to act, he came to rule, with his star status and overarching power. He interfered in everything from the script and directing to lighting arrangements. He despised director Irvin Kershner, and naturally, he viewed Kim Basinger as nothing more than a beautiful blonde doll who knew nothing about cinema. In this chapter, we don't see physical violence. Sean Connery didn't slap Kim Basinger as he did his ex-wife, but he used another weapon, subtler and more damaging to an artist's self-esteem, the disdain of a superior. Backstage crew members recounted that Sean Connery frequently showed open annoyance whenever Kim Basinger offered an opinion or wanted to discuss her character. In his eyes, a man with the patriarchal mindset of the old generation and actress only needed to do two things: look beautiful and say the lines in the right places. Kim's creativity or independence was viewed by him as unprofessionalism, even showing off. There were moments on set when Kim Basinger tried to act in her own way. Sean would stop, look at her with cold, scrutinizing eyes, then turn to the director and say things like, "Can we go back to the old way? She's wasting my time." Try putting yourself in Kim's shoes. You are a young actress full of ambition, standing in front of the biggest monument of your profession, and that monument publicly cheapens you in front of hundreds of crew members. That is a powerful psychological blow. It made Kim feel small, useless, and constantly on edge. She always had to walk lightly, speak softly, trying not to offend the king. The conflict between Sean Connery and Kim Basinger wasn't just personal. It was a collision between two generations, two ideologies. Sean Connery represented the archaic Hollywood, where men were lords, the center of the universe, and women were merely satellites orbiting for decoration. Conversely, Kim Basinger represented the rising generation of new women, who wanted to be recognized for their actual ability, not just their looks. And it was that newness of Kim that provoked Sean's aging ego. He felt his absolute power threatened. He reacted by erecting a wall of ice. He refused to communicate with her outside of mandatory scenes. In romantic scenes on screen, audiences saw them kiss passionately. But the moment the director yelled, "Cut!" Sean immediately let go of her and turned away. No smile, no inquiry. That coldness was a cruel reminder. You are just a tool for me to finish the job. Don't get delusions about your position. Kim Basinger rarely spoke of Sean Connery with terrible words later, but she also never praised him as a dedicated mentor. In interviews, when asked about the experience of being a Bond girl, she often laughed it off and spoke of the difficulties and terrible pressure. She had to fight not only for the role, but also to keep her spirit intact against the crushing weight of her co-star's shadow. The story of Kim Basinger closes this file on a sad, low note. It shows that the monster inside Sean Connery didn't disappear with time. It just grew older and more bitter. If in his youth he used fists to assert power, in old age, he used status and condescension to crush women who dared to stand on equal footing with him. Sean Connery left the role of James Bond forever after that movie, taking with him a massive cinematic legacy and a patriarchal ideology conservative to the very end. As for Kim Basinger, she stepped out of his shadow to become a true superstar, even winning an Oscar later on. But perhaps she will never forget the cold feeling on that Bahamian beach, when she realized the legend the whole world worshipped was actually just a lonely man, imprisoned in his own massive ego and narrow prejudices. In 2020, Sean Connery passed away, taking a golden era of cinema to the grave with him. The whole world bowed to bid farewell to the greatest 007. But when the applause faded and the stage lights went out, the whispered stories from the past remained, persistent and haunting. From the fear in Diane Cilento's locked room, the silent hurt of Lana Wood, to the look of disdain reserved for Kim Basinger, all are pieces that create the true portrait of a legend. Sean Connery was a brilliant actor, that is undeniable. But this dossier reminds us of a naked truth. Talent is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for misconduct, and the title gentleman should not be used to cover up toxic, violent ideology. We love James Bond, but we are not allowed to forget the women who had to endure the dark shadow of the man behind that role. What do you think about the line between artistic talent and personal morality? Can we continue to idolize the dashing James Bond role completely separate from the controversial real man, Sean Connery? Or is it time to stop romanticizing patriarchal behaviors in the name of being an old-school man? Leave your honest opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. We will continue to step into the darkest secrets of Hollywood that the media has never dared to publish.